Hey guys, in this video we'll be discussing if Artillery 2.0 was a nerf to the artillery or was it a buff. Artillery 2.0 changes came into the game about a year ago or a little more than that, and you hear different versions of this update from different players. The player who used to play primarily artillery, they say it's a nerf, and the player who are usually the receiving end from the artillery or getting bombarded by them say it was a buff. So why the contrast in decisions or opinions? Let's go over what Artillery 2.0 changes were. So globally, they reduced the aim time by 1 second. So that's a buff. They reduced the accuracy by 0.1, so basically improved accuracy. Second buff. They improved the penalty by 45%. So shot dispersion during turret rotation was reduced by 45%. So that's a third buff. And then they buffed the hit points of artillery to be same as light tanks of that tier. It says 80%, but some artilleries have higher than the corresponding light tanks. So that is the fourth buff. Now, what was nerfed with that update was they reduced the alpha of the artillery by 40%, but the DPM is still the same. So it's not really a nerf. It's the same as you have still the same DPM, and you can do the same amount of damage in the same time as you were doing it earlier. They did reduce the concealment of artilleries to be more based on size rather than inflated values. And the significant addition was adding artillery indicators. So whenever you are being targeted by artillery, you'll be notified and then you can get in cover. So first we'll discuss how it impacts a tier 10. Because it's different for if you're playing tier 10, basically 8 to 10, or if you're playing lower tiers as tier 5, 6, and 7. I probably play tier 10, so we'll go over that first. So with the changes I mentioned, it's the four changes they did to artillery. It's straightforward, looks like a buff to the artillery. Another thing is, a lot of people say that now the targeted indicator has been added for artillery, so it makes it easier for players to hide. But that's not simply the case. First of all, the aim time is quicker and there's no shot or reduced shot dispersion during turret rotation, so you're quickly to aim and fire. So there's less time for the enemy to have that indicator as compared to how it was originally, even though we didn't have the indicator. So now with the indicator, there's less time to react. Another thing is the artillery target indicator can just be disabled. And many good players, or anyone who's a very experienced player, they do it on regularly. All you have to do is not aim at the tank while you're radically slowing down. You aim a little bit away, about a tank length away from the tank. And then once you're fully aimed in, you quickly move to the tank and then move your reticle away. You'll only be targeted for like a second and the tank won't have time to react. So that artillery indicator, in sense, is pretty useless if you're playing against a good artillery player. Not to mention, there's also a way where you can completely disable the artillery indicator and it won't even trigger. I won't go into that. You can figure that out by yourself, but that is an intended feature, similar to how you can disable the targeted indicator for a regular tank. For example, if I'm in a medium tank facing another medium tank, and if my auto lock onto the tank, but my camera angle is looking somewhere else, then if I keep RBRTing, it will never trigger the target indicator. And it works similarly for artillery. However, not many players know about it. Your average artillery player doesn't know about it, and they think there's no way to disable it, but this is the intended feature, not really a bug. So basically, that indicator is not really that helpful as it sounds. And with the quick aim time, you don't really have much time to fall back, especially when you're in a slow tank like a heavy or even a medium that's not the fastest. But there was a positive change to those artillery changes. It has reduced the number of people playing artilleries, at least at tier 10. I used to see commonly 2 or 3 artilleries in the game or every other map, but now I either see no artillery or 1 artillery, but rarely 2 artilleries. But whenever there is 2 artillery, the experience against them is much worse than it was before, because once they start focusing you, they'll keep bombarding you because they have better reload and better accuracy and so more chances of penning you. But as I said, the passive benefit of this change was less people now play artillery, and it was confirmed by the battle count on third-party sites as well. So I do like that passive effect that it had. And even when it's just one artillery, the experience is still better than what it was before, in my opinion. But when it's two artilleries, it is worse. And so, but the direct impact of Artillery 2.0 changes was that it was actually a buff to the artilleries. Most players that used to play artillery stopped playing it because they don't get the dopamine hit because the alpha has been reduced by 40%. But then they released aviary a couple months later, and now we don't have that much artillery, but more aviaries. But that's a separate topic. But in terms of effectiveness of the artillery, it is way better. Now, talking about the lower tiers. In lower tiers, you see more artillery on average, and those artilleries are crazy because their alpha was reduced by 24%, while they still get all the remaining benefits to pretty similarly to tier 10 artilleries. So those artilleries reload is crazy, even though they still maintain the same DPM. But if you are in a heavy tank, get a little higher alpha. They seem like they're shooting every 10 seconds, or if not less. And they're also very accurate because they had less alpha to begin with, and it is very frustrating at lower tiers, mainly because you will have more than one artillery per game. Like the average is higher by at least 0.5, I think, when I play it, and it just results in a very negative experience. Another thing with this change is because artillery has more health. If you're in a light tank, you can't really kill an artillery like you used to before. Before, whenever artillery spotted, it would die. Now that's not the case because artilleries can defend themselves. And in a light tank, if you're not full health, even if you're full health in some cases, you might not survive. But if you're half health, it's very likely that artillery will shoot you once and then reload and finish you off again. But with the HP buff, it does mean you have more HP to farm. So you can have high damage games because that's additional about 2000 HP or like 1000 HP per artillery at tier 10. And if you have two more artillery, that's extra 2000 damage you can get towards the end of the game. But this has also kind of inflated the MEs because now your artillery has more health and people place less artilleries to begin with. So in my opinion, like the answer at tier 10, that it was not a buff, it was not a nerf, it is the same just because of the passive benefit we got. But if we ignored the passive benefit of people playing less artillery, then it was actually a buff. And a super buff if you're actually facing experienced artillery player. By experience, I mean very skilled, not really just the battle count, because they can just disable your target indicator, as I mentioned earlier. But when we talk about the lower tiers, it is straight up buff. There's no question about it. We didn't get that passive effect. It could be because most of the people they have, they're grinding the lines, so they play more artillery, and not to mention that could just be the meta at tier 5, 6, and 7. And it's very frustrating. I've been playing light tank lately, trying to grind the marks, and I can't even tell you how many times I get killed by artilleries. They just don't miss. And I'm playing a light tank. I was playing Type 64, that goes 70, and I have been shotgunned by every single artillery. I either survive at 100 HP, if I'm full health, if I'm like half health or even 60% of health, I just die altogether. So not a positive experience at lower tiers, and somewhat okay on the higher tiers. And that's what we kind of saw in this game as well, right? This is after nerf, and the artillery still managed to do 9k damage. Now obviously this won't be every game, right? But because of the quick aim time and DPM, you can see how accurately he was able to pen most of his shots, or hit most of his shots where he aimed. He did miss some, obviously due to the angle and terrain, but here's where you'll see. So now he's in shotgun mode, right? Look at the accuracy. He just RBRT'd the tank and penned him. This would have never happened pre 2.0 or artillery 2.0, right? And then he rammed the FV. And FV was not able to, like, even if FV fired like a standard shell, or even maybe hash, definitely he wouldn't have killed artillery with the standard shell that has the highest alpha at tier 10. And even with hash, there's a chance, I guess if he average roll, he would have killed artillery. But there's, unless he's running the perk, he would not have killed artillery with the average roll. So not the easiest thing to kill artillery, even though they have reduced concealment, but they have enough HP where they can get in cover or fight back by themselves, and they're more independent. I wish they'd do some more changes where they reduce the DPM of artillery, as that's what it needs. They can keep the accuracy the same, but DPM has to be reduced so we can have more enjoyable experience when not playing artilleries. Because I don't feel that the passive benefit is really a benefit, or passive impact that the changes had is really an impact for that improved experience of players, because that's not what their intended goal was with the changes, right? I think the goal has to be make things better for players directly as a result of changes, but it did not do that. So that's it for this video. Let me know what you think about Artillery 2.0 changes, and I will catch you in the next one. Have a great rest of your day.